The sandwich on his tray was green with mold. The flight attendant smirked and walked away. He didn't complain. He didn't speak. But 5 minutes later, 146 planes around the world lost their signal. Before we dive into what happened next, tell us where you're watching from, and ask yourself this: what would you have done if they looked you in the face and served you rot? Elijah Ellison sat in seat 2A of Elite Sky's Flight 820 first-class cabin, 12 hours from Tokyo to San Francisco. He wasn't reading. He wasn't working. He was watching, quietly. The tray had landed in front of him with a thud. No napkin, no greeting, no warmth. Just a plastic container, slightly fogged, and a hint of something sour. He opened it. The sandwich inside looked like it had died twice. Edges curled, bread stiff, and underneath, mold. Visible, green, alive. From the corner of his eye, Elijah caught a polished tray sliding gently in front of the passenger across the aisle. Seared salmon, roasted vegetables, cloth napkin, stemmed glass of white wine. He said nothing. The flight attendant's name tag read Rachel. She didn't offer him an apology. She didn't offer him an explanation. Just a shrug. "We ran out of premium meals," she said without making eye contact. "This should be enough." Then she turned and walked away. The man in 2B blinked at Elijah's tray, then looked up, uncertain. Are you okay with that?" Elijah folded his hands on his lap. Voice calm. "It's mold, but apparently that's the new standard." The man frowned. "I've been flying this airline 15 years. Never seen anything like that. Want me to say something?" Elijah shook his head once. "Not necessary." He reached into the inner lining of his blazer and pulled out a thin black tablet. It didn't look like a consumer device. No logo. No glow. Just a matte surface, cool to the touch. He tapped his thumb to the biometric strip. A quiet chime responded. Screen on, interface loaded. Not Netflix, not spreadsheets. It was Sky Mesh Core. A back-end control dashboard the public had never seen. The nerve center of in-flight networks across 8 major airlines. And only one person had root access. Elijah tapped into a private flight diagnostic overlay. 3 taps. 1 thumb scan. A black screen with white text appeared. Global Node Control. F820. Elite Skies Connected Devices. 286 Last Sync. 0702 GMT Status. Stable. He exhaled slowly. Then typed, Temporary Lock. Sky Mesh /. Duration 7M. Reason Breach Code 42. He didn't press enter. Not yet. Instead, he glanced up, past the top of his screen, at the curtain leading to the galley. Voices filtered through. Laughter, whispered tones. Then, "I told you he doesn't look like first class. Miles, probably. Or one of those charity programs. Right? And now he's mad about a sandwich? Please." Another round of quiet laughter. Elijah tapped record on the ambient mic buffer, built for internal QA review. Not often used, but always there. 30 seconds. Saved. His thumb hovered over the send key again. This time, he pressed it. The screen blinked once, then went still. 2 minutes later, across the cabin, systems started failing. Passengers' tablets froze. In-flight Wi-Fi dropped. The payment terminal blinked, error, connection lost. Crew devices stopped syncing. The cabin intercom stuttered and cut. Someone in 3C tapped their screen. What's going on?" Rachel rushed out from the galley, whispering to Logan, the younger male attendant. "I thought the system was stable," she hissed. "Did it do a reset?" Logan frowned. "No alerts, but we lost access to the manifest, too." Rachel turned, caught Elijah's eye. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just watched. A passenger in 2D grumbled, "I paid for premium. I need my emails." Another said, "This is ridiculous. I can't even message my assistant." Rachel walked briskly back to the front. "We're experiencing a minor technical issue. Please be patient." Behind her, Elijah heard someone whisper, "Honestly, he should just be grateful he's up here." In Seattle, inside the Global Network Operations Center of AirConnect Technologies, engineers stared at red lights blinking across their global map. 146 aircraft nodes lost signal simultaneously. Not a crash, not a hack, a manual command. Someone had sent an intentional lock, and they all knew who had that authority. In the air, Elijah took another look at the sandwich, mold now soaking into the bottom half of the bun. He replaced the lid, slid the tray away, then opened a text window on the tablet. Typed 4 words. "Violation confirmed. 7 minutes." Not a single passenger suspected him. Not the couple in row 3 with champagne flutes. Not the businessman in 1A furiously refreshing his screen. Not the crew, still troubleshooting. Not Rachel, pacing like a script had failed. No one asked, what happens when the one man you humiliated owns the system you depend on? Elijah leaned back, eyes closed. The countdown had begun. The hum of the engines faded into background noise as Elijah Ellison sat still in seat 2A, watching the chaos unfold with the calm of a man who had already seen how this ends. 3 rows back, a frustrated passenger was tapping her screen repeatedly. "Excuse me, I can't access the Wi-Fi. Is anyone else having trouble?" "Yes, ma'am," Logan replied. His voice was trying to stay composed, but the edge was creeping in. "We're working on it." Rachel walked past Elijah, not even glancing in his direction, her smile now replaced with clenched teeth. From the galley behind the curtain, she hissed to Logan under her breath, "It's him, I just know it. He's been staring at me since takeoff like he owns the plane." Elijah caught every word. He didn't flinch. The thing about patterns is, they're predictable. And this wasn't new. He'd seen it in boardrooms, hotel lobbies, private clubs, and charity galas. The tilted glances, the polite condescension, the accidental assumptions that he wasn't the decision-maker in the room. They rarely expected the man in the room with the darkest skin to also be the one signing the licensing contracts. And they never suspected he built the network they were standing on. Literally. Elijah had once described his career as strategic invisibility. It wasn't false modesty. It was armor. Let the world underestimate you. Let them talk over you, walk past you, offer you stale bread and spoiled sandwiches. Because when the time came, they wouldn't see the power shift coming until everything went dark. He had started AirConnect 15 years ago with a laptop and a borrowed desk in a basement office in Seattle. Back then, the goal was small, to make airline Wi-Fi not terrible. But as more airlines digitized operations, Elijah saw a deeper need, a backbone, a platform that could route live data, entertainment, payment, and even crew metrics through a single secured stream. That backbone became SkyMesh. He licensed it to one regional airline, then a second, then an entire alliance. And now, in 2025, 8 of the 10 largest international carriers relied on SkyMesh for their most critical onboard operations, including Elite Skies. That power wasn't just in numbers, it was in the silence. Because Elijah kept his name off the headlines. No press tours, no tech expos, no TED Talks, just systems that worked, until they didn't. Rachel reappeared at the front of the cabin, forcing a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief systems disruption. Please remain patient as we coordinate with technical support." Someone snorted in row 3. "You'd think first class would come with better service." Rachel's smile tightened, but she moved on. Across the aisle, the older British gentleman in 2B leaned in toward Elijah. "She's not very subtle, is she?" he muttered. Elijah said nothing. The man nodded toward the tray, still untouched. That mold on your sandwich, that was intentional, wasn't it? Still, Elijah remained silent. The man sighed. I figured. I've been watching them. The way she spoke to you. The way she's ignoring you now. It's shameful. Elijah turned his head slightly. His voice was quiet but firm. How many times do you think this has happened? The man blinked. To me? Never. To anyone who looks like me, Elijah clarified. Who doesn't wear a $1,000 watch or speak with the right accent? Who dares to sit in a seat they think doesn't match the face? The man was quiet for a beat. Too many, I imagine. Elijah offered a small, unreadable smile. I don't imagine anymore. I measure. He reached down, tapped into his tablet again. This time, not the SkyMesh Command Center. He opened a private app, Passenger Ethics Index, PEI, his quiet passion project. Over the past 3 years, Elijah had been integrating an AI-driven feedback model into SkyMesh, one that could flag behavioral patterns from both passengers and crew. Rude language, unequal service, delayed responses, tone variance, even eye contact duration. Not all discrimination was shouted. Most of it whispered. And Elijah had taught his system to listen. The PEI for this flight had already flagged Rachel 3 times. 2 disproportionate delays in beverage service. 1 priority downgrade without explanation. He watched the live stream graph update. A new data point appeared. Passenger 2A, meal discrepancy. Confirmed via crew audio and manifest log. System confidence level, 92.7%. Racial bias event likely. Elijah didn't need the confirmation, but now he had it documented. Back in the galley, Rachel was panicking. Logan was trying to reset the crew tablet, but nothing was syncing. I don't understand, she whispered. We were just fine before. Maybe it's a bigger outage, Logan offered, unsure. Rachel peeked out again. That man in 2A, he's just sitting there, like he's waiting for something. Maybe he is, Logan muttered. Rachel's eyes narrowed. He's not normal. Elijah leaned his head back against the leather headrest, closed his eyes. He could feel the tension shift in the cabin. People were starting to glance around. The inconvenience was spreading, and so was the discomfort. Not because someone yelled, not because someone made a scene, but because something was broken, and no one knew how to fix it. The PA system clicked. A burst of static, then the captain's voice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Holtz from the flight deck. We're experiencing a minor systems issue with our onboard network. There's no cause for concern. We'll update you as soon as possible. Standard script. Elijah had written that protocol himself, 3 years ago. The British gentleman next to him shook his head. You're not going to let this go, are you? Elijah turned to him. Would you? The man hesitated, then nodded. No, I wouldn't. Elijah opened one final tab on his tablet, typed a short message, encrypted, routed through 3 relays. Destination, Jessica Chu, Chief Data Officer, Air Connect HQ. Live incident on board Flight 820. PEI breach confirmed. Surveillance and audio capture in progress. Full report to follow. Stand by for FAA contact. The message disappeared, logged, stored. Then he reached down, opened the tray table, picked up the sandwich again. The mold had spread further, the green halo now clearly visible even through the plastic wrap. He didn't flinch, just held it there, like evidence, which, now, it was. He snapped a photo, saved it to a locked folder labeled Incidents, Confirmed Bias. This wasn't a meltdown. This was a test. And Rachel? Rachel had just failed the system Elijah built. For most passengers on Flight 820, the in-flight disruption was just a mild inconvenience. For Elijah Ellison, it was confirmation. He watched the flight attendants pace nervously, watched Rachel fiddle with the Wi-Fi panel at the front of the cabin like pressing it harder might bring the network back to life. She hadn't looked in his direction once since the moldy sandwich. That told him everything. Across the aisle, a business traveler was venting to a colleague over a failed Zoom call. I told you not to fly elite skies. We're dead in the water. Another passenger in 4D snapped at a flight attendant. My credit card won't go through and I need to pay for upgraded access. Can someone fix this? But the system wasn't broken. It was paused. Elijah calmly reached for his tablet again. It had gone dark in sleep mode, but the moment his fingerprint touched the side, it blinked back to life, ready, quiet, and powerful. He checked the timestamp. It had been exactly 5 minutes since the moment Rachel dropped that sandwich on his tray with casual disrespect. He opened the SkyMesh admin console again, the real one. Not the airline's consumer-facing dashboard, but the root interface. The console no one at Elite Skies had access to, even their CTO. Not without his permission, because Elijah owned the core infrastructure. And like all good engineers, he'd built in back doors, just in case something like this happened. He toggled the overlay that displayed active network nodes by altitude and speed. The data populated instantly, confirming that 146 aircraft under the SkyMesh A cluster were currently airborne and out of sync. The system worked exactly as designed. Each plane was stable, in communication with air traffic control. But internal crew networks, in-flight Wi-Fi, passenger services, all offline, for exactly 7 minutes. No more, no less. A soft vibration buzzed his wrist. A secured Air Connect notification. System alert confirmed. Temporary SkyMesh outage initiated. FAA monitoring activated. Live log in progress. Perfect. He opened the voice buffer again and reviewed the last 90 seconds of crew chatter. Rachel's voice came through, tight and panicked. This is crazy. I've never seen this. None of the tablets are syncing. It's like we've been cut off from ops. I tried rebooting. Nothing's working, Logan answered. Could this be from that guy in 2A? He's been acting off since we served him. What do you mean? I don't know. He's too calm. And his tablet's weird. Like not regular weird. Government weird. Elijah smirked. Government weird. Well, not entirely wrong. His work with FAA integrations had made SkyMesh a quiet force in shaping in-flight tech standards. Elijah never needed a title to wield influence, just control over the framework others relied on. And now, Rachel was learning the hard way what happens when you disrespect the person who built the tracks you're riding on. He checked the cabin ethics monitor, a tool in development, but already functional on test routes. Rachel Wilson, 3 flagged behaviors. 1 confirmed discriminatory service incident, meal downgrade. 1 probable verbal misconduct, voice transcript pending. PEI score, caution, moderate risk. Logan Barton, 1 flagged passive behavior. 1 support interaction, PEI score, neutral good. The data was forming a story, and this story was about to land hard. Suddenly, a soft knock on Elijah's seat. He looked up. It was Logan. Sir, can I speak with you a moment? His voice was tentative, not rude, but clearly nervous. Elijah nodded. Of course. Logan lowered his voice, leaning slightly. I wanted to apologize for earlier. The meal, that's not what you ordered. I checked. I know, Elijah said simply. I don't know what Rachel's problem is, but it wasn't right. I'm sorry. Elijah paused, then looked him directly in the eyes. Do you know what happens when people like her get away with it? Logan swallowed. They keep doing it. No, Elijah said, voice quiet but firm. They start believing they're untouchable, and eventually, the system breaks. Logan didn't respond. He just nodded slightly and backed away. Elijah turned back to his console. 2 minutes left on the blackout. He typed a new directive. Audio Visual Archive. Flight 823. Cabin channel. Timestamp 0702 0710 GMT. Export copy to legal team. Air Connect export copy to FAA. Flag. Discrimination review. Priority high. He added a note. Multiple passenger witnesses. Cabin surveillance active. Crew behavior and breach of contractual ethics, clause 5.2. Then he sent a private text to Jessica, his head of compliance. Flag this flight. Possible policy-level investigation needed. Pull crew files on Wilson Barton. Her reply came fast. Already reviewing. HR logs show 4 prior service complaints filed against Wilson in past 12 months. 2 involved minority passengers. Elijah's jaw tightened, but he didn't show it. This wasn't just about him. This was a pattern, and patterns demanded corrections. The intercom clicked again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We're approaching mid-flight cruising altitude. We continue to work through minor connectivity issues. We appreciate your patience. Elijah checked the time. Sky Mesh auto reactivation in No 37, ZO 36. Behind him, Rachel emerged from the galley with a confused look. Her crew tablet buzzed in her hand, the first signal it had received in nearly 6 minutes. I think it's coming back on, she whispered to Logan. Passengers began noticing too. Hey, my screen's working again. Wi-Fi just came back. Guess someone fixed it. Rachel forced a smile, regaining false composure. Elijah looked down at his tablet and pressed one last button. Debrief packet, Flight 8 Tontori. Auto send upon landing. Recipients, FAA, Elite Skies CEO, Air Connect Executive Compliance. The plane continued westward across the Pacific. Quiet, cold, composed. Exactly how Elijah liked it. He closed the tablet, folded his hands, and waited. The crew didn't know what was coming. The passengers didn't know what had just happened. But by the time Flight 820 touched down in San Francisco, the truth would be waiting for them at the gate. And the system, it would never be the same again. By the time the Sky Mesh blackout clock hit 0, the cabin was humming with tension. Passenger screens rebooted. Wi-Fi symbols blinked back to life. Credit card readers synced. Crew tablets lit up again. Rachel Wilson sighed in relief. Finally, she muttered to Logan as she tapped frantically through the system. Looks like we're back online. But Logan was watching something else, or rather, someone else. He wasn't the smartest guy on the crew, and he didn't pretend to be. But he wasn't blind. He'd seen the moment Elijah opened that strange black tablet. The one with no brand, no sound, no apps. He'd seen the calm in his eyes as everything around them began to fall apart. And now, that man was still sitting quietly in seat 2A, back straight, eyes closed, tablet tucked back in his jacket like nothing had happened. Rachel took a few deep breaths, smoothed her hair, and forced her face back into her flight attendant smile. She reached for a new meal tray, one of the real ones, and made her way down the aisle with fake confidence. She stopped beside Elijah's seat. "Sir, we have a fresh halibut entree if you'd still like dinner." Her voice was sugar-coated, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. Elijah looked up slowly. He said nothing. Then, calmly, clearly, "You think I'd eat anything you bring me now?" Rachel froze. "I'm trying to make things right," she said, but it came out defensive, not apologetic. Elijah studied her face for a moment, then responded, voice low and even. "You didn't run out of meals. You made a decision, one I'm guessing you've made before." Rachel opened her mouth, to deny, to excuse, to scramble. But before she could speak, another voice cut in. I saw it too. It was the man from 2B, the British gentleman, rising slowly from his seat. "I watched you serve him that spoiled sandwich while everyone else got a full-course dinner," he said. "And I heard what you said behind the curtain. We all did." Rachel's face went pale. Across the aisle, a woman leaned forward. "Me too. I couldn't believe it." Someone else nodded. "I recorded part of it, just in case." Suddenly, the cabin didn't feel so quiet anymore. Suddenly, the silence Elijah had carried like armor was starting to echo. Logan stepped forward. "Rachel, maybe you should—" "I've got it," she snapped, the sweetness vanishing in a blink. "We're not entertaining baseless accusations mid-flight." "Baseless," Elijah said, his voice still calm, still cutting. You served me mold. You mocked me behind a curtain. You laughed while I was eating rot. And now that the system's rebooted, you're scrambling to pretend it never happened." The passengers were silent again, not out of fear, but attention. Rachel's face flushed. "If you don't like the service, you're welcome to file a complaint when we land." "I already have," Elijah said. "The system did it for me." Rachel blinked. "What?" But Elijah was done talking to her. He turned to Logan. "You might want to call the purser." Less than a minute later, a new woman arrived. Older, sharp-eyed, calm. Her name tag read Danica, in-flight lead. "Good evening," she said. "Is there a problem here?" Logan cleared his throat. "There's been a concern about earlier meal service." Rachel jumped in. "A misunderstanding. The passenger was unhappy with his meal." Danica looked at Elijah. "Is that accurate, sir?" Elijah pulled his tablet from his jacket, tapped it once, then turned the screen toward her. On it was a time-stamped image. A sandwich, visibly green with mold. Underneath, his sky mesh system logs. Danica scanned it silently. Her posture stiffened. "This was served to you in first class?" "Yes." She looked back at Rachel. "Can you confirm this is what you gave him?" Rachel's mouth opened and closed, searching for a way out. "We had inventory issues." "No," Elijah said, interrupting her flatly. "You had a choice, and you made the wrong one." Danica took a breath. "Understood. I'll be reporting this immediately to cabin control." "Too late," Elijah said, voice low. "It's already with them." Back in Seattle, at Air Connect's command hub, the system log was building. Elijah's tablet had sent a full behavior report to the compliance division, flagged with Class A discrimination risk. FAA systems had already pinged the irregularity. Now it was a matter of how public the fallout would be. Rachel, trying to salvage something, anything, took one last shot. "You know," she said, her voice a little too loud, "most people in first class don't cause trouble." Elijah turned his eyes to hers. "Most people in first class don't get fed garbage," he replied. Then, the PA system crackled. Captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making our initial descent into San Francisco. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts." The tone was neutral, but Elijah had been in the business too long not to hear the subtext. The captain knew, and someone had told him who was sitting in 2A. Rachel retreated to the galley without another word. Danica stayed behind for a beat, then turned to Elijah. "Would you like to file a formal complaint once we land?" Elijah looked at her, cool and measured. "It won't be necessary." Danica blinked. "No." He tapped his tablet. A secure email window blinked. To FAA Compliance, Elite Skies Legal, CEO Office. Subject, Flight 820, Recorded Discrimination Incident Attachments, Audio Logs, Cabin Behavior Analysis, Sky Mesh Data Packet. "I already did," he said quietly. 5 minutes ago." Danica's mouth parted slightly in surprise, and then, softly, "Understood, sir." She turned and walked away. The plane began its slow glide down toward San Francisco, the city lights rising like circuits from below. In most cabins, passengers were preparing to land, shuffling bags, making calls, annoyed by the delay from earlier. But in first class, they were still looking at Elijah, not with pity, not with curiosity, with something closer to respect. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't cursed, hadn't demanded. He had simply waited, watched, and pulled the thread until the system unraveled on its own. 5 rows back, a woman whispered to her husband. He didn't say a thing for the first 2 hours, but now look, even the captain's quiet. In seat 2B, the British gentleman offered a faint nod. "Remind me not to ever underestimate a man with a quiet face and a black tablet." Elijah leaned back in his seat as the aircraft descended through the clouds. Rachel had fallen silent. Logan looked nervous. Danica was already preparing her incident report. But Elijah? He was thinking about the next step, because the landing would just be the beginning. And by the time the wheels hit the tarmac, this flight would become a case study in accountability. The wheels hit the tarmac at San Francisco International Airport with a clean thud. For most passengers, the landing meant the end of a long-haul flight, a chance to stretch, call a car, go home. But not for Elijah Ellison. For him, it was the start of something much bigger. He didn't rush to unbuckle his belt. He didn't stand. He just sat in 2A, quiet, patient, as the aircraft taxied toward Gate C-12. Across the aisle, a few passengers whispered. Not about baggage, not about connections, about him. Isn't he the one they gave that rotten food to? Yeah. But did you see what happened after? Whole crew froze. I think he's someone important. From the window, Elijah spotted 3 figures waiting at the jet bridge entrance. 2 wore Elite Skies executive badges. The third wore a Navy FAA blazer. He smiled faintly. Right on time. In the galley, Rachel Wilson paced like a trapped animal. Her tablet now worked, but the system had locked her out of the cabin logbook. No access, no control, no way to adjust the narrative. She whispered sharply to Logan. "Did you tell anyone?" "No," he muttered. "Didn't have to." Rachel clenched her fists. "This is insane. I've done this job 12 years. You think I'd risk everything over a stupid sandwich?" Logan didn't answer. He just looked toward 2A. "Maybe you already did." The seatbelt sign chimed off. But instead of the usual flurry of motion, the cabin stayed frozen. Something in the air said, "Wait. Watch." Elijah stood, straightened his blazer, reached into his pocket for the black tablet, and walked calmly to the front of the aircraft. Waiting just beyond the cabin door was Marla Dennison, VP of Elite Skies Customer Experience. Her expression was polished, but the nerves behind her eyes weren't hard to spot. Beside her stood Darius Kim, Chief Compliance Officer, and Agent Neil Sutton, FAA Liaison Officer. "Mr. Ellison," Marla said, extending a hand, "we'd like to escort you privately to the executive lounge to discuss what happened." Elijah shook her hand. "No, we'll discuss it here, publicly." Marla blinked. "Excuse me?" He turned slightly, so his voice could carry back into the first-class cabin. "They deserve to hear it too." Passengers leaned forward in their seats. Marla glanced toward the cabin, then back at Elijah. "We don't normally handle complaints in front of other customers." "This isn't a complaint," Elijah said, eyes steady. "This is a formal incident report, already submitted to your CEO and the FAA, with data logs, audio evidence, and system diagnostics." Sutton cleared his throat. "We received the report 30 minutes ago. Live SkyMesh packet, time-stamped. It's legitimate." Marla's smile cracked. "Mr. Ellison, I assure you, we take this seriously." Elijah leaned forward, just slightly. "I don't want assurance. I want accountability." Behind him, a voice spoke up. Firm. British. He's not exaggerating. It was the man from 2B, stepping into the aisle. "I watched it happen. I heard your flight attendant make comments about who belongs in first class. I saw what he was served, and I saw how she tried to cover it up when the network failed." Marla turned pale. Elijah nodded once, grateful, then added, "And that failure wasn't a bug. It was a test, a system-wide pause to log behavior in real time and flag discrimination before it disappears into he said, she said." Agent Sutton stepped forward. "For the record, Mr. Ellison, do you confirm this action was executed under SkyMesh Compliance Testing Protocol 12B?" Elijah looked him in the eye. "Yes, I initiated a temporary systems freeze under Emergency Compliance Review Authority, which I retain as part of AirConnect's Ethical Oversight Clause." Logan, now standing awkwardly in the galley, blinked. "AirConnect?" Rachel muttered. "He's with them?" Elijah turned to face the rest of the cabin. No anger, just precision. "I'm not just a passenger. I'm the architect of the system your airline relies on, and I built that system to ensure no one, no matter how quiet or how different, gets dismissed without evidence. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was respectful. Passengers weren't just watching anymore. They were witnessing. Marla tried to speak. "Mr. Ellison, on behalf of Elite Skies, I deeply apologize for—" Elijah held up a hand. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to everyone who's ever been served less, spoken down to, or quietly pushed aside, because they didn't look the part." He paused. "This isn't just about one sandwich. It's about how you feed your culture." Sutton turned toward Marla. "I suggest we begin internal crew interviews immediately. Passenger statements, too. FAA will issue a temporary service freeze on the flight team pending review." Rachel took a step back. "Wait, what? You're suspending us?" Marla didn't answer, because at that moment, her phone buzzed. So did Darius Kim's and Elijah's tablet. The CEO of Elite Skies had just replied to Elijah's original data report. The message was short, clear. "Full executive review convening tonight. We stand by your authority. Clean house as needed." Elijah read it once, then slowly turned to Rachel. She looked smaller now, not because he'd shouted, but because the silence had turned against her. Outside the jet bridge, reporters had begun to gather, tipped off by a Sky Mesh data leak that had already hit 2 aviation forums. Inside the cabin, no one moved. They weren't just passengers anymore. They were part of a reckoning. Elite Skies HQ, San Francisco, 7:11 p.m. The top-floor boardroom was unusually full for a Tuesday evening. No catered dinner, no wine. Just bottled water and tension thick enough to slice. At the far end of the polished oak table, CEO Cassandra Wynne sat rigidly, one hand gripping her tablet, the other resting near a sealed envelope with "Compliance Urgent" stamped across the front. Next to her sat General Counsel, Chief Operating Officer, and Head of Risk and Audit. At the opposite end, Elijah Ellison. No entourage, no briefcase. Just that same quiet presence, and the black tablet resting silently on the table like it didn't need to announce itself. Because by now, everyone in the room knew what that tablet could do. Cassandra spoke first. "Mr. Ellison, Elijah, I want to begin by stating plainly, we failed." Elijah didn't nod, didn't blink, just listened. She continued, voice slower now. "The footage, the logs, the crew chatter, the food tray." She exhaled sharply. "We didn't just fail you. We failed every passenger who ever sat in one of our premium seats expecting respect, and got contempt instead." The General Counsel cleared his throat. "You understand the potential fallout here. We've already had inquiries from the FAA, Department of Transportation, 3 major media outlets. They'll multiply by morning," Elijah said simply. "No emotion, just fact. And they'll be justified," he added. The head of risk tapped a screen in front of her. 17 flagged complaints involving first-class passengers of color in the past year. 5 named Rachel Wilson directly, all dismissed due to lack of documentation. Elijah turned slightly. "You never lacked documentation. You lacked the will to look." A pause stretched long across the room. Then Elijah reached forward, tapped his tablet once. A file appeared on the wall screen. Subject: Flight 820. Pattern confirmation. Moldy meal incident audio recordings from Galley Live, PEI. Behavior metrics system initiated network freeze protocol passenger witness statements. He turned to Cassandra. The system worked exactly as designed. The only anomaly was the human response. The COO leaned forward. "What are you asking for, Mr. Ellison?" Elijah looked around the room, deliberate and slow. "Not silence, not another internal memo. I want your entire training protocol overhauled. I want AI-based behavior tracking expanded to every cabin. I want a public statement, not with vague apologies, but with names, facts, and measurable commitments. And I want Rachel Wilson, Logan Barton, and the captain from Flight 820 permanently removed from service. Documented. No NDA. The room stiffened. Cassandra raised a brow. You want us to name them? Yes, Elijah replied. And if you don't, I will. The FAA already has the data. So does the press. The only question left is whether your company will be the one to speak first, or be the one that responds later. The legal team shifted uncomfortably. The general counsel muttered, publicly naming employees may expose us to consequences? Elijah cut in, calm but sharp. He tapped the tablet again. A new screen displayed real-time social sentiment data. Trending. Elite skies discrimination. Over 4.2 million views on a single Reddit clip. 11.3K shares of the Moldy sandwich photo had fly right trended on X within the last hour. He turned back to the room. You're already being exposed. The only question is whether you'll be part of the rot or part of the reform. Silence again. Then Cassandra leaned forward, her voice steady now, not performative. Real. I want this fixed. All of it. And not just because it's a PR nightmare. She met Elijah's eyes. Because if someone like you, a partner, a builder of the very tech we fly with, can be treated like a second-class citizen, then this company has failed at its most basic purpose. To fly people with dignity. She turned to her chief HR officer. I want full behavior tracking rolled out across the network by Q3. Retroactively review the last 3 years of service complaints. Build a standing passenger review board. And I want Mr. Ellison's seat at this table. Permanent. Advisory board. Oversight authority. No token title. Full voice. The HR officer's eyes widened. Are you sure? I'm sure. Elijah didn't smile, but something in his jaw relaxed. For the first time in hours, he spoke without defense in his tone. Good. Then he stood. Because this isn't about what you did on Flight 820. It's about what you'll do after. As he turned to leave, Cassandra called after him. One more thing. He paused. That system freeze. How long before you pushed it? Elijah glanced back. 5 minutes. She nodded slowly. Just 5 minutes. And it changed everything. Outside the boardroom, the press waited. So did aviation analysts. And by midnight, so would the rest of the world. Elijah walked past the cameras. No comment. But the story had already been written. Not by words. By signal loss. By a sandwich. And by a man who said nothing until the system spoke for him. By sunrise the next morning, Flight 820 had become more than a flight. It had become a headline. Black CEO served moldy food on first-class flight. What he did next left an entire industry shaking. 146 flights disrupted after silent boycott. Tech executive forces airline to face its bias. Who is Elijah Ellison, the quiet billionaire behind the Sky Mesh shutdown? The story was everywhere. And the more people learned what happened, the clearer it became. This wasn't a PR crisis. It was a reckoning. At Air Connect headquarters, Jessica Chu's inbox had tripled overnight. Regulatory inquiries, media requests, but also something more unexpected. Emails from executives at other airlines. Delta, Pacific Star, Argent Wings, even Emirates, all asking the same thing. Can we license your passenger ethics index system? One COO wrote, we've relied too long on surveys and silence. What you've built forces accountability. We want in. Jessica forwarded the thread to Elijah with one note. You didn't just trigger change, E. You opened the door for a new standard. Elijah didn't reply. He didn't need to. Meanwhile, at Elite Skies, the internal fallout began to unfold. Rachel Wilson, terminated. After review of surveillance, crew audio, and 5 prior passenger complaints, HR's report was decisive. The email to her was short. Your behavior on Flight 820 constitutes a violation of Sections 3, 5.2, and 7.1 of the Passenger Service Ethics Code. Effective immediately, your credentials have been revoked. She appealed, cried, threatened legal action. Then someone leaked the galley recording. He probably used points or some diversity program to sit here. They need to learn their place. And suddenly, no one was defending her. Logan Barton, suspended. He hadn't said the words, but he'd stood by, watched it happen, didn't intervene. His review read, failure to report peer misconduct, deferred judgment to bias, no prior disciplinary history, mandatory ethics retraining, 1-year probation. Captain Holtz, removed from active flight duty. The FAA had reviewed his decision to threaten diversion based on crew bias, without passenger misconduct, safety violation, or investigation. His license wasn't revoked, but his reputation? Gone. Passengers from Flight 820 began posting their own experiences. Some praised Elijah. Others admitted they'd witnessed similar behavior and said nothing. One post, from a teacher in 4C, went viral. I didn't speak up, and I should have, because the way that man was treated was wrong, and he handled it better than I ever could. Back at Elite Skies HQ, CEO Cassandra Wynn held a press conference. She stood behind a podium, visibly tired but clear-eyed. We failed. Not just one customer, but every person who's ever flown our airline expecting dignity and instead received doubt. That changes now. Behind her were 5 new policy announcements. SkyMesh passenger ethics integration on all flights by Q4. Creation of an independent passenger review board with quarterly public reports. Immediate termination of repeat offender crew. Mandatory bias and equity training across all departments. Elijah Ellison appointed as strategic ethics advisor to the board. The last announcement drew headlines, not because Elijah sought a title, but because of what it meant. For the first time, an airline had handed over real oversight to someone who had no interest in protecting optics, only in protecting people. The broader industry responded fast. 3 regional carriers reached out to license SkyMesh. 2 international airlines announced their own bias audits. The Department of Transportation requested a full demonstration of Elijah's real-time behavior monitoring system. And behind closed doors, flight crews everywhere were being warned. There's no more hiding behind curtains. The system is watching, and passengers are watching back. Back in Seattle, Elijah sat in his home office. Lights dim, coffee untouched. Not triumphant, not angry, just still. Jessica stepped in with an update. We've had 4 speaking requests. Harvard, The Times, Bloomberg Tech. He looked up. Decline them all. She nodded. I figured. A pause. Then, you know you changed the rules, right? Elijah tapped the side of his tablet. No, I just made people admit the old ones were never fair. Later that day, he received a package. Inside, a sealed envelope and a handwritten note. Dear Mr. Ellison, I was seated 3 rows behind you on Flight 820. I didn't say anything that day. I should have, but I'm saying it now. Thank you for speaking when the rest of us stayed silent. Thank you for reminding us that silence doesn't protect dignity. It hides injustice. Sincerely, a passenger who won't stay quiet next time. Elijah folded the letter slowly, slipped it into a drawer already half filled with similar messages, and closed it gently. Because this was never just about a meal, never just about a moment. It was about the gap between who we claim to be and how we show up when no one's watching. Except now, everyone's watching. 3 weeks later, what began at Seat 2A had reached Capitol Hill. Inside the federal hearing room, the mood wasn't hostile, but it wasn't casual either. Reporters lined the walls. Flight attendants in uniform filled the benches. Airline lobbyists whispered from the back row. And at the center, sitting behind a simple microphone and a tablet no bigger than a book, was Elijah Ellison. No tie, no legal team. Just him, and a proposal titled, The Passenger Equity and Transparency Act. a framework for bias-free air travel. The chairman of the Transportation Subcommittee leaned into his mic. "Mr. Ellison, you've made waves, quietly, but undeniably. You initiated a network pause across nearly 150 flights, exposed a pattern of discriminatory behavior on a commercial airline, and helped implement one of the fastest internal reforms in recent aviation history." He paused. "But today isn't about one flight. It's about what comes next." Elijah nodded once. "Yes, sir, because if change stops at one airline, we've missed the point." The chairman gestured. "Proceed." Elijah tapped his tablet. The screen behind him lit up. A chart appeared, 2 bars. Passenger satisfaction, white. 83% passenger satisfaction, non-white. 61% another chart. Crew response time, another. Meal quality complaints by ethnicity, another. Upgrade denials by name profiling. No commentary, just data. He turned to the room. "We measure turbulence. We measure fuel. We even measure how many bags fit in the overhead bin. But when it comes to bias, we guess. And guesswork is how injustice hides." He advanced the slide. Now came the heart of the proposal. 5 pillars. Mandatory bias tracking systems. All major U.S. carriers must implement AI-based behavioral tracking systems, anonymized but pattern-sensitive, across premium cabins by 2026. Passenger rights transparency cards. A printed or digital card listing all service entitlements in each fare class, issued at check-in. Visible, shareable, auditable. Flight Crew Ethics Index. Every cabin crew member to have an internal performance record tied to real-time passenger treatment data, not just internal reviews. Protected escalation protocols. A system where passengers can trigger a silent, secure complaint log mid-flight, automatically reviewed post-landing by a third-party board. Federal penalties for documented bias airlines failing to address verified patterns of service disparity within 90 days to face scaled financial penalties, based on route volume, not flat fees. A senator from Arizona leaned in. "You're proposing regulation that monitors behavior. That's going to stir privacy concerns." Elijah met his gaze. "We already record the temperature of the coffee, but not the tone of voice used to serve it." He paused. "What you call privacy, passengers often experience as invisible cruelty, and when we don't name it, we normalize it." The room was quiet. Then the senator nodded, slowly. Back in Seattle that evening, Elijah sat in a small glass-walled room at AirConnect HQ, reviewing post-hearing feedback. Jessica entered, laptop in hand. FAA's general counsel just sent over a draft letter of support. So did the DOT. He nodded. "Push it live." She hesitated. "You know you've made enemies too, right?" He looked at her. "We weren't hired to make friends. We were hired to fix the system." She smiled, half exhausted. "Well, missions in motion." Elsewhere in the country, ripples began turning into waves. Delta Airways announced pilot testing of PEI metrics across 3 international routes. Argent Wings restructured their crew ranking system to include respect scores from passengers. 2 aviation unions issued joint statements requesting bias mitigation training designed by third-party advisors, including Elijah. A podcast titled Quiet Seat 2A climbed into Spotify's top 50 within a week, hosted by 2 flight attendants discussing hidden bias in air travel. But not everyone welcomed the shift. A lobbyist from the Airline Service Council went on record. "We can't algorithm our way to morality." Elijah's quiet rebuttal was posted to the official PEI blog. "Morality starts with memory. Algorithms don't forget. That's why they scare people who depend on passengers forgetting." By month's end, Elite Sky's stock had rebounded, surpassing pre-incident levels. But more importantly, their internal metrics told the real story. First-class complaint rate dropped by 36%. Passenger-reported crew warmth rose by 22%. And more surprisingly, crew morale rose too. Because for the first time, flight attendants knew the system didn't just measure how fast they moved, it also cared how kindly they moved. At a leadership summit in New York, Elijah was invited to deliver closing remarks. He declined the keynote, but agreed to speak for 5 minutes. He stood on a simple stage, no slides, no screen. Just one line. I don't care if you like me. I care if you think twice before handing someone like me the worst sandwich on the plane. The room was silent. Then came a slow, building applause. Not for drama, but for truth spoken plainly. That night, as he boarded a flight back to Seattle, this time seated in 2A without incident, the new flight attendant approached with a menu and a respectful smile. "Mr. Ellison, welcome aboard. We've got your meal exactly as requested." He nodded politely. "Appreciated." She hesitated, then added, "I just wanted to say thank you for making it safer for people like me to do this job with pride." Elijah looked at her name tag. "Marisol." "It's not about pride," he said softly. "It's about making sure silence isn't mistaken for acceptance anymore." She smiled. "Well, you did that." The lights dimmed. The engines roared. And as the plane lifted through the clouds, Elijah allowed himself, just for a moment, to relax. Not because the fight was over, but because for the first time, it had a runway. Change makes noise, but resistance whispers at first. It started quietly. Anonymous memos, subtle rewordings, emails with subject lines like operational clarity, concerns around overreach. Elijah had seen it before. This wasn't fear of failure. This was fear of accountability. At the Air Connect building, Jessica stormed into the strategy room holding her phone. "It's happening," she said flatly. Elijah didn't look up. "How many?" 3 major airlines have paused PEI rollout. 2 claim technical setbacks. 1 says they're revisiting contract terms with legal. Elijah shut his laptop, finally looked at her. "Who called the meeting?" Jessica raised a brow. "Lobby group, Aviation Business Alliance. They want a closed-door summit, CEOs only, no advisory reps." "Including us?" She nodded. "Especially us." Across the industry, the messaging had shifted. The new line wasn't, "We don't need this reform." It was more dangerous. "We support reform, but let's not rush it. Let's be thoughtful, strategic, balanced. Let's not overcorrect and create fear among honest employees." Elijah called it what it was, delaying under the banner of diplomacy. Behind closed doors, tactics sharpened. An anonymous op-ed appeared in The Atlantic. Algorithmic morality. Why data shouldn't dictate decency. Cable pundits echoed it that night. "Look, no one supports racism, but we're heading into territory where one accusation could end a career before facts come in." And then came the first counter-leak. A message surfaced from an internal Air Connect Slack, a sarcastic remark by a junior engineer about in-flight service and entitled elites. It was nothing major, but they pounced. Bloggers, influencers, airline insiders, all demanding to know, how unbiased is the system if the creators themselves show bias? Jessica pulled it up and grimaced. "They're not attacking the data anymore. They're attacking the people." Elijah nodded. "Classic discredit tactic. If you can't kill the message, smear the messenger." Meanwhile, inside elite skies, the resistance took another form. A group of veteran flight attendants filed a union grievance. Behavior monitoring is causing workplace anxiety. Crew members feel surveilled, not supported. The new system treats every frown like a crime. At first, HR wavered. Then someone from the board leaked a comment. "We can't let one man rewrite 50 years of service culture just because he had a bad flight." Elijah wasn't surprised. Disruption always invited backlash. But now, it was organized, funded, focused, and targeting him personally. He received hate mail. A podcast accused him of weaponizing race to sell software. One former exec tweeted, Funny how the guy who built the system is the only one who profits when people get flagged. Jessica tracked down the source of that narrative. It came from Altia Stratcom, a crisis PR firm hired by 4 airline lobby clients in the last 2 weeks. Elijah read the memo, then said quietly, "They think this is a PR war. I'm fighting for the next 10 years. They're fighting for the next headline." The board at Air Connect grew nervous. In a closed-door call, the CFO raised concerns. If this turns into litigation, or if unions demand rollback clauses, we could bleed contracts. Another board member added, "Maybe we pivot, repackage PEI as an optional upgrade instead of mandatory integration." That's when Elijah leaned forward. No anger, just precision. Optional integrity is no integrity at all. Silence. Then he stood up, closed the laptop, and left the room without another word. 2 days later, he received a call. Cassandra Wynn, CEO of Elite Skies. "Ellison," she said, skipping pleasantries. "I've got a firestorm in my HR department. Unions are furious. PR is drowning, and the board's circling." Elijah waited. "I've stood by you," she continued. "But I need to know, is this system survivable?" His response was immediate. "It's not supposed to survive everything. It's supposed to survive the truth." She didn't reply at first. Then, "Okay, I'll see you Thursday. We'll face the shareholders together." That Thursday, at Elite Sky's annual meeting, the mood was different. No dramatic entrances, no applause, just quiet expectation. Cassandra opened with standard reports, then shifted. "Before we close, I want to address the elephant in the cabin." She gestured toward Elijah. "Mr. Ellison." He stepped up to the mic. No slides this time, just a story. "My father wasn't a rich man. He worked the night shift at SeaTac for 23 years, cleaned gates, watched passengers board flights he could never afford. I remember him telling me once, 'Son, flying used to feel like a miracle, but now even miracles have a dress code.' He let that sit. This isn't about spoiled food, or one flight, or one rude crew member. It's about how we treat people when we think no one important is watching. And I built a system that watches, not to punish, but to preserve the very thing this industry lost: dignity and silence." The room was still. Then, someone clapped. Then another. And soon, the shareholders stood. Not all, but enough. Later that evening, back in Seattle, Elijah sat alone, watching clips from news coverage. Most were favorable, some weren't. He turned it off. He'd never cared for noise. He preferred systems, because unlike headlines, systems remember. And what they remember, they eventually reform. The email came at 6:04 a.m. No banner, no formatting, just a plain subject line. Effective immediately. Crew decommissioning notice. Flight 812. Elijah opened it without emotion. He already knew what it would say. Rachel Wilson, permanently ineligible for rehire across all FAA-licensed carriers. Captain Holtz, license officially revoked by federal order. Logan Barton, voluntary resignation, closed with final warning notation. Internal system logs now classified as public training material. But that wasn't the real news. Attached was a second document, Cross-Industry Expansion Plan for PEI, signed by 4 new clients, hospitals, universities, even one major federal agency. Before we go further, have you ever witnessed someone stay silent, only to change everything later? Tell us where you're watching from, and if this story reminds you of anything you've seen. Now let's see what happens when reform begins to outgrow revenge. Jessica stepped into his office holding a mug and a tablet. She saw the screen, stopped mid-stride. "They're actually doing it?" He nodded. "We've crossed the gate." She blinked. "From airlines to everything else?" "Bias doesn't stop at seat 2A, Elijah said softly. "So neither will we." In the weeks that followed, headlines shifted again. Ellison's ethics index moves into healthcare, nurses to be rated on respect as well as speed. After Flight 820, education boards pilot dignity-based grading reviews. Government quietly launches PEI-like protocol for agency frontline staff. Some called it overreach. Others called it overdue. But what no one could deny was this: the idea had taken flight. 1 year later, the world didn't look different, not at first glance. Airplanes still flew, crews still offered drinks, passengers still scrolled through in-flight Wi-Fi and ignored the safety card. But if you paid attention, really paid attention, you'd notice the silence had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't the kind people used to survive. Now, it felt like something else entirely. Structure. At Reagan International, a new gate had just opened. Gate 41C. Above it, a small plaque read, "This terminal participates in PEI, Passenger Equity Index. Every traveler matters." Below it stood a woman in a wheelchair, first in line. Nobody asked if she was boarding early for the right reason. They just helped her, quietly, completely, as if she belonged, because she did. Meanwhile, at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, a new exhibit had opened. Voices in Transit: How One Flight Changed Everything. Inside a glass case, placed next to archival seat maps and stewardess uniforms from the 1960s, sat a single object: Elijah Ellison's matte black tablet. Unplugged, closed, but surrounded by testimony. Next to it, a plaque. He didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. Back in Seattle, Elijah sat at a park bench by the pier. He wasn't attending board meetings anymore, wasn't in the news, didn't give speeches. The system he helped build had grown beyond him, which is exactly what he wanted. He watched a father lift his daughter onto his shoulders, a group of teens laughing as they tried to pronounce "foe" on a street sign. None of them knew who he was. Perfect. Jessica joined him, iced coffee in hand. "Guess what dropped this morning?" Elijah raised a brow. "White House press briefing. PEIs being formally recommended for adoption across federal service departments." He nodded. No surprise. She continued. "And the Department of Education signed a deal. They want to adapt the model for classroom equity tracking." He didn't react. Do you realize what that means? You started with a sandwich. Now you're rewriting public service delivery." Elijah looked at the water, then said softly, "I didn't rewrite it. I just reminded them it was broken." Later that afternoon, he received a letter. Not email, not Slack. A real letter, postmarked from New York. "Dear Mr. Ellison, my name is Jamal. I'm 17. I was on Flight 820. Not in first class, in row 32B. I remember seeing the flight crew ignore you. I didn't say anything. I didn't think someone like me was allowed to. But the next morning, I watched you on the news. And I watched again, and again. Now, I'm applying to schools. I want to study systems engineering, like you did. I want to build things that catch people falling through cracks. Thank you for reminding me that quiet doesn't mean weak. It can mean ready." Elijah read it twice, then folded the paper neatly, placed it in a drawer next to a dozen others like it. None of them asked for money. None wanted retweets. They just wanted to say thank you to a man who didn't shout, but still got heard. The new CEO of Elite Skies sent him a quarterly dashboard. Metrics showed consistent rise in satisfaction, lower crew turnover, and the highest first-class rebooking rate in 10 years. She included a handwritten note. "Your system didn't just fix service. It gave us culture that corrects itself." He smiled faintly. That was the goal. Not to catch villains, to build structures that make villainy inefficient. One morning, Elijah visited a university where he'd once studied engineering. A professor had invited him to speak, not as a tech genius or executive, but as a case study. He declined the podium, but sat in on the ethics seminar. At one point, a sophomore raised her hand and asked, "So, what made you fight back on that flight? Like, what made you..." not just let it go? Elijah thought for a moment, then answered, because I knew I wasn't the only one eating moldy sandwiches in silence. A few students chuckled, but one girl in the back nodded, slowly, like it wasn't a joke. Because to her, it wasn't. That night, back at home, Elijah walked past a framed photo of his father. The old man stood in his baggage-handling uniform at SeaTac, smiling faintly, gloves in hand. Elijah whispered, "We don't just carry luggage anymore, Dad. We carry each other's dignity." Somewhere across the country, a passenger in first class rang the call button. The flight attendant approached, not irritated, not rushing, and said, "Yes, how can I help you?" The passenger asked about a missing meal preference. The attendant checked the system. "You're right, I'll correct that right away." No attitude, no assumption, just respect by default. That flight wasn't special. That flight didn't make headlines, and that, more than anything, proved Elijah's legacy had taken root. It wasn't about the tablet, not about the footage, or the headlines, or even the money. It was about one man showing that silence can be structure, if it's backed by clarity, and a system that speaks when people can't. 14 months since Flight 820. There was no press release, no ribbon cutting, no dramatic farewell. When Elijah Ellison resigned from all his advisory roles, he did it with a 12-word message. Systems should run on values, not visibility. I'm stepping back, not away. He sent it at 5:17 a.m., while the sky over Seattle was still a quiet bruise of violet and gray. Jessica was the first to respond. She didn't argue. She knew this was coming. Instead, she replied with, "You didn't just design a system. You designed a new silence, one people can trust." He read it once, smiled, and shut the tablet. No notifications, no follow-ups. That part of his life was complete. The announcement hit the wires by noon. Elijah Ellison steps down from PEI Oversight Council. System to continue under open governance model. Analysts scrambled to speculate. Is he running for office? Health reasons? Was there internal pressure? But those who understood Elijah, truly understood him, knew better. This wasn't retreat. It was release. He'd never wanted a throne, just a lever. And once the lever worked, he let go. Back at Air Connect HQ, a small group gathered in the ethics wing. No speeches, no catered snacks. Just a quiet circle of engineers, analysts, and policy leads, staring at a blank whiteboard. Jessica stood up first. "He didn't leave us empty." She pointed to the values list Elijah had taped to the glass wall a year ago. Transparency without punishment, structure without surveillance, correction without shame, dignity that doesn't depend on who's watching. They read them again, slowly, like scripture. Because in a way, they were. Then someone picked up a marker and wrote, "Now we carry it." And they did. Meanwhile, Elite Skies continued operating under full PEI compliance. Their most recent audit showed customer complaints had dropped 49%, repeat bookings up 31%, diversity in cabin crew recruitment rose 22%, and no further incidents flagged for discrimination in first class in 11 months. The system worked, but more importantly, it wasn't centralized anymore. The airline had licensed PEI to 3 other carriers. The model had been ported into hospital triage prioritization, public school grading appeals, government service counters, and even parole board hearings. Elijah watched all of this from afar. He still read the audits, still tested the APIs quietly, still reviewed implementation bugs on GitHub at night. But he never inserted himself again. Because good engineers don't babysit their code forever. They build, refine, then trust. One day, he walked into a coffee shop where the barista looked no older than 19. The kid handed him a cappuccino and said without irony, "I use PEI metrics in my shift dashboard. Helps me log customer energy before they get upset." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Really?" The barista grinned. "Yeah, Manager calls it reading the vibe before the volume. Elijah chuckled, paid in cash, and walked out without ever saying his name. Weeks passed, then months. No articles, no panels, no leaks. But one day, quietly, Harvard Business Review published a case study. The Ellison Exit: Why the Best System Designers Know When to Vanish. The piece ended with a quote from one of Elijah's old team members. He didn't want to be the face of the fix. He wanted to be the absence that held the fix in place. In his final public appearance, Elijah sat in the back row of a town hall meeting in Oakland. Not as a speaker, just a citizen. A group of local activists was pitching PEI-adapted models to track housing application fairness. One speaker, a young woman with braids and glasses, gestured to the screen. This idea came from an old story, a guy who got served a moldy sandwich on a flight. But instead of suing, he built something that made the whole industry rethink how they define service. Elijah sat still, didn't correct her, didn't raise his hand, just watched and listened. And when the meeting ended, he left through the side door, blending into the dusk. Back home, he pulled out the drawer in his study, the one with the letters. There were now 43 of them, from students, flight crew, passengers, civic workers. He picked one at random. It was from a woman in Atlanta. My son has autism. He's nonverbal, used to hate flying. But last month, a flight attendant knelt beside him, didn't ask questions, just smiled and handed him a soft pair of noise-canceling headphones. She said it was part of the new PEI Quiet Care Protocol. I cried right there in 3D. Thank you for building something that protects people like my son, without asking them to prove their worth. Elijah read it 3 times, then folded it gently, placed it back in the drawer. Sometimes the loudest change comes from the quietest people. Have you ever seen someone walk away, not in defeat, but in full control? Tell us where you're watching from, and if that moment still stays with you. Now let's close the story. That night he packed a small bag, 1 coat, 1 book, no laptop, and boarded a train headed north. No one recognized him. No one asked about systems, or sandwiches, or flight numbers. They just let him sit in peace. As the train curved along the coast, the sun cut low through the window. He closed his eyes and exhaled. What he built wasn't perfect, but it no longer needed him. And maybe that's the best definition of legacy, when the thing you made keeps speaking, long after you stop.